Welcome to Keep Hustling, where we are going past the why to get to the how. I'm your host, the always hustling Aaron Gordon, aka NY Risk Advisor, aka Mr. Keep Hustling. In this podcast, we will be diving deep into the professional and personal successes of our guests to find out how they hustled through the most difficult times in their life and their development to achieve the success they've gotten to today. So buckle up for what hopes to be an amazing ride. Let's get to it. Welcome to Keep Hustling with my guest, Ira Gleser. Ira, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
How is the weather in Atlanta today?
It's kind of a crummy day, quite honestly, but it is winter.
Flights are grounded. Flights are grounded. Delta disaster, even though I'm a Delta loyalist. And
it's
whatever.
just rainy and cool. It's a good day to kind of be under a blanket, reading a good book or binge watching something.
I have a lot that I want to ask you about as it relates to hustle and keep hustling. And I tell people, in every episode I mention this, read the bio. Ira's is super impressive. I want to talk about some of the companies you've worked with and some of the things that you've done. But first and foremost, Coke, Diet Coke, Coke Zero. Which one?
Me personally?
Yeah. I'm just breaking the ice here.
I've always been an original Coca-Cola guy, Aaron.
Wow.
Yeah. When I worked there, I refused to try Diet Coke until I was coerced by my senior manager. Said, you've got to help promote and market this. You might as well taste it. So I had one and said, yeah, not for me.
Is it true that there's water fountains with like Coke and Diet Coke in them? Or is that a myth?
At headquarters?
Yeah.
No, that's a myth.
Oh, man, you just ruined everything. You ruined everything.
I'm sorry.
All right, let's
There's
jump
a lot of myths about Coca-Cola that we probably don't need to talk about.
Exactly.
Unless you want to.
Your marketing genius and experience really got to the top of consumer goods. I mean, we just mentioned Coca-Cola, but companies like Coca-Cola, Microsoft.
Yep.
What is it like? I've heard a lot about the marketing business in general.
Mm-hmm.
What is it like hustling your way to the top through that? Where does it come from, that drive to get to those positions?
Yeah. It's a great question. And by the way, I love the name of your podcast not just because I'm a sports guy and all the sports analogies, but the whole idea of hustling has so much context for business. So kudos to you. I love that. The short answer, what is it like? When I mentor young people who are in marketing, want to get in marketing or get ahead in marketing, I try and bring it back. I'm a simple guy, right? I live in the South. We keep things simple. And I say, look, marketing is really two things. There's the artfulness part of it, which is all about the creativity and the content creation and being really compelling and engaging and having fun. And there's hundreds of great examples of what that looks like, not just advertising. Then there's the science part of it, which is more the analytical piece and really understanding your target audience and what are they thinking, feeling, and what do they want and where are they and how to reach them. And back in the day when I had, big marketing jobs, I play in both playing fields, but I tended to really enjoy the analytical piece. The creative piece is fun. But it was more gratifying for me to figure out, okay, we have great creative or we have a great idea. Let's talk about the media plan. How are we going to reach these people? And so I think great marketers can play in both sandboxes, but there's different types of skill sets and competencies required. And I would just finish this by saying one of my favorite funny quotes. I have to give attribution. Sergio Zeman, who was Chief Marketing Officer at Coca-Cola for quite some time. Amazing man, huge personality. He once said in a room of 500 employees, mostly marketing people, ladies and gentlemen, marketing is too important just to rely on the marketing people. So in a way, everybody's a marketer. And so part of the challenge is you have to build consensus. You have to build excitement for the idea. And ultimately, you have to go to somebody with your hat in your hand and ask for funding or ask for approval. And afterwards, you better be able to talk about ROI. Was it worth the trip? Was the juice worth the squeeze? So that's part of what the reality of it's like. And the hustling part, it's like anything else, Aaron. If you're passionate about what you do, you don't need the alarm clock to go off in the morning. You're already awake. And I had some great mentors and leaders. And one of the things I learned is you have to be really passionate. You have to be the number one ambassador for your idea, your brand, your product. And you have to build that excitement and you have to build that energy, because you can't just mail it in. Even for a brand like Coca-Cola, you have to keep hustling, because Pepsi's out there and Dr. Pepper are out there. And you know what? Folks are starting to say, I don't want to drink soda anymore. I want to have something else, maybe something a little healthier. So you have to have the passion and the energy. You have to have the fire in the belly. If you are trying to mail it in as a marketer, you're just not going to be successful. It's just my opinion.
There's a lot to unpack there. And I
Yeah.
want to begin by saying thank you again for the kind words you said about the podcast. But I think it all gets back into it. And that is, I've said time and time again that the goal of this podcast is not to convince people to hustle to death, but it is the anti-hustle culture. And I get a lot of slack on social media because people think that I am suggesting that keep hustling means you hustle till the death. But I think one of the things that you're saying that is super important, especially for younger people, especially for people who dream of getting to the pinnacle of whatever their definition is one day, is that you have to figure out what your hustle is
Yep.
and hustle to that goal. Meaning, if I understand what you were saying, you're not the creative guy. You don't have the gimmick that comes to you in the middle of the night. You have the analytics side. Had you tried to force your circle peg into that square hole, you probably would not have gotten to anywhere that your bio says you got. And some of that is traditional. Some of that is saying, oh, but also the fact that you realized that your peg on the stool, your leg on the stool was not the traditional one, right? The creative in marketing, as you said, right, is that the creative people have to find other people to buy in. But you're talking about being way before your time in analytics. What was it like back in the day trying to convince people that analytics was a thing? Not to get Moneyball here, but like now everybody does analytics. Analytics are easy. You have SEO, you have internet, you could see who goes up to the vending machine, what they take out of all that kind of stuff if you're in the beverage and food space. Back then, I imagine it was a lot of like, we don't think this product is selling, but then we realized that 7-Eleven wasn't putting it in the right shelf or something,
You're 100% right. And my answer, it's a great question. My answer might surprise you a little bit. And yes, I'm going to date myself. I am a boomer and proud of it. But honestly, and I say this with a smile on my face, in those times, there were lots and lots of quote unquote market research companies. And they would go out and do quantitative work. They would go out and do lots of surveys and talk to a lot of consumers. And then there was another set of firms who did a lot of demographic and geographic work. So to try and cobble together a story that today, pick your favorite AI assistant, Copilot, ChatGPT, you can probably get something in 60 seconds. But I wanted to say one other thing to answer your question, and this is really old school. So apologize in advance.
I love it. I actually prefer the old school, just so you know.
Well, then I think you'll like this. Back in the day, one of the career life lessons for me is I was part of a team that went to a senior leader with a proposition to go spend a fairly big chunk of money, 7 figures, on a research study. And I won't bore you with what we were trying to figure out and what the end in mind was. But we finished our pitch and he sat back in his chair and he put his feet up. He said, "Hey guys, I'll go find you the money. But as a shareholder, I have a better idea. Why don't you all get your behinds on some airplanes and go out into the market and go into some retailers and restaurants and convenience stores and watch guests and shoppers. Watch what they do. Watch how they interact. Watch what they buy. What you'll learn there is probably going to be exponentially more valuable than what a 65-page PowerPoint research summary is going to show." And that was a real life lesson for me from a career standpoint, that I think sometimes we get lazy, we sit in front of our screens, we get the answer. But even last week, I had an experience where I had some insight just going to a retailer I'm very loyal to and just watching how consumers interacted with the team in the store. And I think sometimes we forget how important that is. The moment of truth where the rubber meets the road, where transactions happen.
I agree with you 100%. And I think that a lot of what we're going to see, and I would say the opportunity for younger people, I am unfortunately, I think no longer a new person in the workforce. I've been doing this for, closer to 20 than 15, than 10 years, I should say. But the people who believe that experience means nothing, and by experience, I don't mean the years that you put in. I mean the actual experience. I mean the talking to the clients, talking the clients through, having sales work that you didn't think were going to work, having things that made complete sense on paper and in numbers not work, and then figuring out because the lettering was wrong or was at the wrong time or what that experiential mode was that was incorrect. And I think that there's so much that is being missed on the technology side. And I see it in every single company that I interact with. And the companies that are big enough that can just solve problems quickly with money and easy solutions, so they can afford to have subpar customer service, because their ultimate customer service, Amazon's a great example, is we'll just let you keep the item, we'll refund your shipping, we'll take care of you. It doesn't matter that the person can understand what you were saying. It doesn't matter that the product didn't work. Nobody really cares about that as long as they take it back and all those kind of things. But for the average person, you're right. Watching how people go through stores, watching how people interact, watching the most successful employees who are the ones who have that experience, I think that there's going to be a big shift in the workforce, because the people who are not as qualified, who worked in the hotel, if you will, and can understand what it's like to be at the front desk, will be able to outsmart the analytics. Not that analytics are not important, but I think you have to have both.
Yeah, it's a great point. I have two quick thoughts that popped in my head. The first one is I agree with you so much. Experience is everything. One of my marketing lessons that I taught to others, when I hear a great line, Aaron, I shamelessly steal it and then I give attribution. But the line, I remember being in front of an enterprise restaurant chain, a senior marketing executive, and he assembled all his agencies and supplier partners like Coca-Cola. And his call to action for us is, guys, I brought you all together. You have half a day to figure out, what he brought us all together to figure out. And the last thing he said is, remember, at the end of the day, we want to surprise and delight our guests. And I never forgot that, because even personally, if I'm in a restaurant and something happens, or if somebody remembers me, or one of my favorite retailers, if someone says, hey, Ira, I remember last time you were here, you bought this. And that's where technology comes in, because now you know that so easily. So experience is everything. And I forgot the second thing, which was going to be even more fun than the first thing. It'll come back around.
I'll give you a great example. One of my closest friends was
Yep.
traveling with his family to Park City, Utah over the summer. I hope I don't mess this up. I believe that they were staying in the Ritz-Carlton. It was either the Four Seasons or Ritz-Carlton, but I believe it's the Ritz-Carlton because I think the story fits
Yep.
that. And they're Orthodox Jewish, which means that they're strictly kosher. And they walk in, and the hotel at night has a big bonfire with s'mores making. And totally uninteractive to them, the night manager overhears their kids asking them if they can make s'mores, and the parents explaining to them, and the kids weren't even upset afterwards, which is the important part of the story. If the kid was kicking and screaming in the lobby, you'd want to know why the kid was kicking and screaming in the lobby. They just overheard the conversation and saw them walk by. The next evening, when they arrived back from their excursion, there was a basket at the front desk, and the guy said, here's your kosher s'mores making kit. Go and enjoy the fire. And many people's immediate response to that is, it's the Ritz-Carlton, it's the Four Seasons, they can afford it. But every single hospitality brand can afford a $10 Instacart of graham crackers, marshmallows, and chocolate.
Yep.
I didn't say champagne. I didn't say a nicer car to go to the airport.
Yep.
Anybody, but it's about that listening, that experience. And you don't think that the next time that they want to go somewhere, that brand is going to gain loyalty from them? And the manager didn't ask, but if you're not on the floor, you can't experience it.
Right. Well, it is a great example. And there's been case studies written about the Ritz-Carlton. Same idea. See, to me, what you're describing is hustling. That's really paying attention, because what folks don't really understand and appreciate, the great ones do, that high performers in the hospitality, restaurant, and retail industry need to be taught that they are brand ambassadors. You're not just teamwork. You're not teammates. You're not frontline workers. You are representing the brand. When you put on the uniform, the apron, you are the brand. So the experience that you deliver doesn't just reflect on you and if you're going to get your bonus or whatnot, but it represents the brand. And that, to me, is why I've always loved that space, because you can have the greatest marketing campaigns, and there are plenty that have failed. Why? Because no one really thought about, what does it look like across the counter? What does it look like at the moment of truth? And that's where you have to value your greatest asset, which is your people. And that comes with training and creating that level of passion. And obviously, in your story, that gentleman had that instilled in him, that I'm an ambassador for this brand. and I'm going to do something. There's a great show on Hulu, The Bear. It's all about the restaurant industry. And there's an episode very similar to your story where a family comes in. They've never been to Chicago before. I think there was a child that was terminally ill, and you couldn't get a reservation at this particular restaurant. And they're there in the summer, and they were kind of lamenting that they lived out in the Southwest, and they were so hoping to come to Chicago and see it snow. And it's summer. And so my favorite character in the show goes out and gets a snowmaking machine. And I only thought about this because you said s'mores, built a fire in August. And if you're not in tears when you're watching this, it's the same idea. It's back to what we're both saying. It's experience, but it's also surprise and delight. And I'm not sure how we got down this road, but it's a great road, and it's an important road because the real brand building, Aaron, from my experience, it doesn't happen in the conference room. It doesn't happen at the offsite. It happens in the store, in the location, in the hotel. And that's the lesson I think great marketers understand.
And by the way, I think anybody who's going to be in any sort of sales and service should spend some time in the food or hospitality industry.
100%.
It doesn't have to be your career, but spending some time, there's no other way to first of all, get yelled at.
Yeah.
Cover for other people's mistakes. I worked in an ice cream store, cover for other people's mistakes, which is part of this business, right? Nobody's perfect.
Yep.
I always like to find something in people's bios that seems to not fit or that's striking. And I would like to ask you a question about a particular line in your bio. So when you're talking about your time at Coca-Cola, Microsoft, I'll mention AT&T, huge companies in the marketing capacity. You said analytics, pitching multi-million-dollar marketing plans to presumably senior management at one of these companies. And yet, the last line in the bio that you sent me reads as follows. He also recently published the #1 Amazon bestseller, Stewardship for Business, which we will link in the bio below, a playbook for creating deeper, more successful customer relationships. Now, I am second generation of family business, boutique small family business, family owned and operated. I believe that my life's mission is to create deeper, more successful customer relationships. And everybody wants to create more successful customer relationships. How is it possible? And how did you get to? And what's the secret sauce of deeper relationships when, no offense to depths in relationships, you sold cans of soda?
Yeah.
A commodity.
Right.
How does deep relationship connect with that? Because I think that there's a lot. I assume there's a lot there.
Yeah, there's about another 30 minutes worth there, but I'll just keep it at 10,000 feet. First of all, thanks for asking. The whole area of customer relationship management has been a passion of mine because my journey has really been, I've worn two hats most of my career, marketing we've talked about, and then business development. And we'll just take the cans of soda real quickly. Yep. Lots of soft drinks made their way to shelves or in cups, thanks to a lot of hard work by me and a lot of other folks. But you have to remember in the value chain, whether it's a bottle of soda or a cup of soda or what have you, it has to make its way through a retailer or an operator, and that's a customer. And yeah, you have a great brand and they're obligated to carry your brand, but creating value, bringing insights, what's going on in your industry? Hey, we're seeing this, bringing trends, not just walking in saying, hey, we've got a great summer promotion. How many cases can we sign you up for? It's really showing a deep understanding of their business. I used to love starting off a meeting with a retailer saying, when I was at store 2560 the other day, full stop. Tell me about your experience. Tell me about my team. Tell me about what happened. What'd you order? What'd you buy? What happened? And my colleagues are looking at me like, where did that come from? So the reason that's a passion of mine, Aaron, is what I've been experiencing, what I've seen, I've had a front row seat, is relationships are not something that is taught. Relationships are not something that you can go take a class for. It happens by virtue of your DNA, your upbringing, your experience, but it has to come from leadership and management. And what I'm seeing is we're becoming more transactional. We get on calls like this and we can't wait to fire up our 45-page PowerPoint and tell you all about our product or our solution. And we're missing that opportunity. One of my one-liners that I love is my first job was in a shoe store in Western New York. And the owner was a nice Jewish man. And he hired me because I was a nice Jewish boy. And I just watched how he did business, and he gave me a line. He said, "You won't appreciate this until 20 years from now." He said, "People buy from people they like and trust." And so in my speaking engagements where I talk about the principles from the book you were kind enough to just mention, that's my second slide. And then I pay it off saying like equals relationships. Trust equals creating value. And so what I'm trying to pay forward now is it has to come back to relationships. Relationships are the currency of business. And we're just becoming far too transactional. So whether you're selling cans of soda or cloud or AI or wrenches or tools or consulting services, it all comes back to you're going to sit across from somebody and they're going to make a decision about you in 60 to 90 seconds. How you start off the conversation and how you engage is going to go a long way to building trust. And as you demonstrate that you really care to take the time to understand their business, listen more than you speak, is going to make all the difference. And so I know it seems like a little bit of an odd duck, but when I left Microsoft earlier this year, I had a personal goal that I really wanted to write this book in the spirit of paying it forward and sharing 30 years of insights and best practices on how you manage customer and client relationships.
I think that there is something so powerful there because I am in a direct customer business and my relationships are important, but it is the people in my industry that I find that are willing to embrace the commoditization that become a commodity. And it's fascinating to hear you say that. I guess this should be obvious to someone who's in sales, but it's just interesting to me because what I think you're getting at is selling the can of Coke or Coke Zero for me is about a relationship. Now, the relationship between the end consumer and the producer is divided, or it's not direct in there. But if the guy in the convenience store doesn't have the relationship with you, then he may let his stock run out. Then he may not want to carry the new product. Then he may not make sure that that refrigerator is where it's supposed to be, or that the shelves are filled, or that the glass, by the way, on that fridge. I was in a convenience store the other day, and one of the fridges had a poster over it. And I was thinking, an advertisement. I was thinking, whose product got stuck behind there? Now, It could have been part of the gimmick, all of those kind of things. But if the manager of that chain has a relationship with you, or you had the relationship with the regional manager, but your next salesperson was taught to develop the relationship with those people, then that gets the can of Coke in my hand. And so I think everybody can see that in any business, that even if you think that you are not directly interacting with the consumer, you are ultimately. And you ultimately hold responsibility or hold the power to change or to tilt just a tiny bit. And what is it that they say? If you change, if you move a little bit of a degree very close, then far out it becomes a very wide spread, right? The slightest little change can roll to miles and miles apart. So it's the same thing here. If you keep it laser focused, that's great. But if the person at the top is not focused on the relationship, then as it gets further down the chain, it's not there. So I think I just think it's amazing that someone like you, who spent all that time, came to that conclusion when really most people who did what you did would have written a book about the number of products that they were able to sell, the number of widgets that they were able to optimize.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Look, I've been very fortunate and blessed. I've had a career full of terrific mentors and terrific leaders who stretched me and were willing to teach. My concern is leadership today needs to invest that time. It's easy to say, take this course, here's your training requirement, and here are your goals for next quarter. Times are different, no doubt, but I still believe what you said right there, not to dwell on Coca-Cola, but having worked on the front lines, selling Coca-Cola to, retailers and operators, at the end of the day, Pepsi might come in with the Brinks truck full of cash or a great promotion, or I can get you courtside seats and you can sit next to Shaquille O'Neal. But if I'm in there bringing insights, helping them understand how to grow their business, at the end of the day, having Shaq's autograph is cool and it's a great story to tell your friends. But if we can help you grow your business 40% during the holiday season, that's money in the bank. And that's, again, it comes back to trust and relationships. And we have to remember, we're all people. Anyway, that was the inspiration for the book. And as you can tell, I'm pretty passionate about it.
I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
As you know, and I'm so pumped by this. As you know, we have a closing tradition on this podcast where we ask our guests to leave us with their favorite motivational or inspirational quote and what it means to them and to their hustle. So with that, I'm going to turn the floor back over to you. Say thank you again for being here. Thank you for sharing your insight. Thank you for writing the book. I ordered it today. And the floor is yours.
Yeah, short and sweet. There are so many. I was sitting here thinking about it since you kind of prepped me a bit. It's a real simple one. The enemy of better is good. And it very simply just means this. Sometimes you get to a point with something, an initiative, a product rollout, a pitch, anything in business, and it's good. Good may not get it done, especially given how competitive the marketplace has become, how some people are struggling and some are succeeding, and sometimes taking that extra time, taking that extra step, hunkering down, as we say in the South, and hustling a little harder to get to better. You know that great line from the movie Any Given Sunday, Al Pacino, one of my favorite movies, and when he's in the locker room, he talks about that inch. We need that inch. Going for better is going for that inch. And the first time I heard that, it really resonated with me. And I've always strived for better. But here's the caveat. Sometimes, is the juice going to be worth the squeeze? Most of the time it is, sometimes it's not. But if you're not constantly striving for better and settling for good, you're not going to be successful.
And that is keep hustling, if I could sum it up.
Yeah.
This has been another episode of Keep Hustling with my guest, Ira Gleser. Thank you again for being here. Remember, do well by doing good, and of course, and always, keep hustling. All right, hustlers, that brings us to the end of another fantastic episode. Thank you for listening. The listeners are the most important part of this show. If you like what you heard, please leave us a review wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more listeners. Plus, be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. We have some amazing guests and topics lined up for you, and we don't want you to miss out. And finally, if you have any suggestions, comments, or even just want to say hello, please feel free to reach out to us on all social media platforms. We are Keep Hustling Pod on Instagram, X, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We would love to hear from you to continue the conversation. Thanks again for tuning in and supporting our podcast. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. Until next time, stay curious, stay hungry, and keep hustling.